Hello, and welcome to Simply Cydni. Today we'll be preparing shrimp and grits from the comfort of my cousin's home. Say hey, Serena.
Hi.
So first off, before we dive into shrimp and grits, the most important foundation are the grits. As you can see, my grit cakes include Yellowstone grits, roasted garlic, Gouda, white cheddar, and regular cheddar cheese, and salt and pepper for a little twist. Next, I will focus on my shrimp. Here you can see that I have peeled and deveined shrimp with the tail not on. So I'll be putting this in the pan to sear them up soon. Next, we're placing the shrimp in the pan. Now what we're going to do is, our goal right here is just to give them a nice little sear. We're not trying to cook them completely because they are going to go back in later in our sauce. So we're just going to move them around a bit. And like I say, we season as we go. Layers of seasoning. So I'm going to put a little pepper here. Just eyeball it, about your preference. You add a little bit of salt. Okay. Toss them around for a bit. Now again, you can use shrimp with the skin on or tails on. It's really your preference, but I prefer shrimp that just ready to eat and easier to eat as well. So I'm just going to let these go for about 2 minutes or so, if that, and then I'll take them off and I'll see you at the cutting board. So I just sauteed up the shrimp. Now we're going to focus on some other meats we have. Here I have some andouille sausage. It's a spicier sausage, but if you don't prefer a spicy sausage, you can substitute it with Polish sausage, kielbasa, really any smoked sausage with the casing. So I'm just going to slice some more up. And again, I like to slice it kind of thin because remember, our star is the shrimp, so we do want to showcase the shrimp. And next over here, I've already chopped up some bacon. As you can see, the bacon, it's fairly thick, and I just did some small slices of these. You can use pancetta if you prefer, but my favorite's bacon, especially if you're going to have a good old southern shrimp and grits. So now I'm just going to place this in my pan, the same pan I fried my shrimp in. However, I did kind of reserve some of the grease from the shrimp because I don't want it too greasy since bacon creates its own grease for the most part. So I'm just going to break this up, put this down in here. And you do want to make sure you keep an eye on this because remember your smoked sausage, it's already pre-cooked, but again, you may want to just fry it up, get it nice and crispy. And your bacon, you want to make sure you're constantly moving so it cooks evenly. That's why it's also important, again, to make sure that your knife cuts are kind of fairly even so things can cook around the same time. So I'm just going to let this go for a bit, and we're going to come back over here and chop our veggies on the cutting board, so I'll meet you there. So now that the meat's cooking, I'm just going to go ahead and kind of chop up my vegetables, multitask here. So I'm going to start with the red bell pepper, and honestly, you can use any pepper. I prefer red bell peppers because they're a little sweeter, and I feel like they hold up a little better while cooking. So I'm just going to dice these, a medium dice. And make sure that you always tuck your fingers in while cutting because you don't want to be that one person. So now that we have our peppers, our onions, now it's time for the shallot. So I'm going to cut the shallot the same way you cut an onion. Put it flat side down. Just do a mince. Now the reason why I like shallots is because when they're sauteed up, they have like a sweet flavor, and I think it's going to add a nice element to my shrimp and grits. So I'm just going to slice it up here and dice it. And if you're not an onion person, you can just leave these out, but the onions, in my opinion, do make the dish. So now I guess we're going to go back over to our pan and add this to the meat mixture. So now that we've chopped up our veggies, we're going to add them to our pan. Oh yeah, the sear is where it's at. So we're just going to add this. And we are just going to stir it. And we're going to let this go for a bit because, like I said, we took the meat out and left the juices and the fattiness of the meat. So this will saute up pretty nicely. We're going to let it go for about 5 minutes, and I'll see you back in a few. Now that our peppers, onions, and shallots are now sauteing on the stove, I'm just gonna chop up some green onions here because I'm gonna throw these in towards the end of the cooking time because since they're so crisp and fresh, I want them to still retain their freshness, so I'm just gonna toss them in at the end. And also they're gonna be a garnish, so I'm just gonna thinly slice these. Okay, and for meat, I don't like using the white parts of the green onions, so you can just toss these out. And that's it. That's our green onions. I'm just gonna add my bacon and andouille sausage that I had already sauteed up the first time, and I'm just gonna let this go for a bit, okay? And now that my pan is really, really hot, I'm just gonna add some sherry cooking wine, probably about 1/4 cup or so. You can kind of eyeball it. That's the sounds you wanna hear. If you're not hearing that sound, then your pan was not hot enough. So I'm just gonna kind of let this cook out for a bit. And while that's simmering out, I'm gonna add some chicken broth, about the same amount, if maybe a little less, about 1/4 cup. Just a little bit of the chicken broth here. And the chicken broth kind of quiets the sauce down a little bit. Okay. And we're gonna add our Obey seasoning, about a tablespoon. Because what is shrimp and grits without Obey? Just gonna get some flavor in there. Okay. Gonna let this simmer a little bit. Now I'm gonna add a little bit of heavy whipping cream. Now this makes my sauce nice and thick and creamy. And this butter is going to be used to help saute and pan-sear my delicious, yummy grit cakes. So these have been sitting up in the freezer, and see how firm they are now? Just going to place them in the pan with the butter. I'm just going to let them sear and get nice and golden brown. So now that our sauce is nice and thick, as you can see here, I'm just going to add my shrimp that I had sauteed just for a bit before. I'm going to add all of that tasty tender shrimp in, alongside some of the fresh green onions that I had chopped not too long ago. And I'm just going to let this go. And I'm just going to let it cook for about a minute, minute and a half, if that, just enough to get the shrimp cooked and to get it nice and tender. So I'll meet you at the table. I guess this was a job well done. Bon appetit.